Don't adjust your video settings. This is what I really look like. Wait a minute. Which one am I? Take your pick. Oh, darn it. Here's my first copyright strike on the channel. At the risk of sounding like a real Texan, howdy y'all, and welcome to my airbrushing part 3 of the airbrushing series. I am in this video going to take apart the airbrush, completely clean it out, and hopefully get it back together again in working order. But to do that, I have to mess it up first. So what I've decided to do is get some burnt sienna here and try painting the sides of some 40-year-old Atlas track with it. And if that doesn't work out, I'll ditch this video faster than hot snot. Sorry about the hot snot thing. But anyway, here we go. Okay, I've loaded up the airbrush with some burnt sienna here, and let me check my air pressure, which is way too high. All right. There we go. It looks kind of rusty, I think. All right, let's try it out. Hey, how about that? It's actually kind of working. Now, of course, I think it would be a lot easier, especially in the layout, to just do this with a brush, but, you know, for the purposes of messing up the airbrush so I can clean it, it works. All right, let's turn that around. If I stay close enough, maybe I won't get it completely all over the ties. Of course, there's going to be a little. Like I say, airbrushing probably wouldn't be the first choice to do this. But there you have it. All right. How did we turn out here? Yeah, looks kind of rusty. I think probably a little darker would do it. Let's see. Nice thing about acrylic paint is you don't have to wait too long before you shoot it again. Dries up pretty quick, especially with the thinner in it. So, second coat is real fast. There we go. Alright, so anyway, that's not what this video is about. I just wanted to mess up the brush. So, I'm going to take and wipe this off, and yeah, it looks kind of sort of rusty. I don't know. Like I said, I think I'd rather do it with a brush. But anyway, all right, there we go. Next up, cleaning the airbrush. Okay, now that I have a properly dirty airbrush, I'm going to tell you first off that some people do not agree with this, but I use Windex to clean the airbrush. For me, it works out great. Just ordinary blue Windex. Works great. I've been doing it that way for over a year that I've had this airbrush, and it's still working just fine. It hasn't eaten any of the O-rings or anything like that. I put a little bit of Windex in the cup here, and I'm just shooting it into the cleaning jar, and it is blowing right back out again. Great. Alright, come on now. Maybe I need a little more pressure, huh? There we go. You can also, I've seen a lot of people do this, but you can also block the tip and do a little bubbly inside the cup there. That kind of helps clean out the channel right underneath the cup here also. Close enough with the camera here? I think so. All right. Bubble it around a little bit. Get rid of some more in the cleaning jar. Now this cleaning jar and the cleaning kit I'm going to show you, I have, hopefully I remembered to put links to all this stuff down below. Just in case anybody wants to look for any of this stuff. I have the compressor, the airbrush, the cleaning jar, and some of the accessories and stuff like that all listed down there. Alright. First thing I'm going to do is take my little disposable cup here, and I am going to put in enough windex here to cover up all these little parts. So I'm going to put the cup cap in there, and then I'm going to take the needle cap off. I'm going to pull back the trigger so that I don't accidentally damage the tip of the needle, and then I'm going to take the nozzle cap off. Such fancy names for all this stuff. And then I will take the, well, before I do that, let's take the back end off of this airbrush cap. The back handle just unscrews, comes off. And then I'm going to pull this trigger back again, and I'm going to take my little wrench here for the nozzle, and this thing is so small it is really difficult to see. Once I have that loose, I will just unscrew that, hopefully. And I'm going to drop that into the windex. Alright, now, on the chucking guide, what a fancy name, I'm going to take the nut off that holds the needle into the guide. That doesn't get dirty. And I am going to push the needle out the front of the airbrush. And I do that so that hopefully paint that's on the front part of the needle won't get inside the guides in the body of the airbrush. Also, I'm going to take this cap off. So in order to avoid damage to the needle and pulling paint right through the airbrush, I usually do everything through the front of the airbrush. Okay, and then I will take the chucking guide out. It just unscrews. Got to kind of watch this. There's a spring in there, but it's okay. And I will pull that right out the back, and that doesn't get dirty either, so it should be all right. And then the trigger, just I turn it and pull it out, and there you have it. Shouldn't have any paint on that either. Okay. Now I have my little Q-tips here. Oh, dare I say Q-tips? Cotton wool buds. I don't know what I should call them. I should have stock in the company, though, I'll tell you that. All right. I'm just going to take some of this windex and swab out the inside of the cup, the outside of the cup. And I am actually missing an O-ring on this cup. There's supposed to be an O-ring around the threads right here. It broke, and I took it off, and I never replaced it, and it's cool. I get some paint on the threads of the cup, but aside from that, it doesn't leak. So I decided, well, you know, instead of ordering 15 of these little O-rings, I'm just going to leave it off. And it actually works just fine. All right, there's the cup cleaned. Now I'm going to take this cotton wool bud here and start swabbing out the inside of this where the cup attaches. And yeah, we got lots of burnt sienna in here. It's lovely. And I will kind of swab that out also. Another thing you could do is take a bigger brush here and kind of have at these threads on the inside and the chamber down below. If you can kind of see that, it's yeah, fairly clean. Probably ought to do that once more. Yeah, not bad. Not getting any more paint out of it. And while I'm here, I'm gonna clean up the outside of this so I don't get it all over me. There we go. This part where the needle comes through, this needle guide, doesn't usually get much going on there, so I'm not too worried about that. While I have this in hand, I'm going to take my smallest little brush on the ring and put this through the needle channel, and yeah, we will get some of our rusty color out with that, but I didn't use it very much this time, and yeah, it's in pretty good shape. All right, clean out this little cup here. By the way, you could put, if you're just doing a tiny little bit of painting, I've actually seen where people just put the paint in to the little cup here without the big cup being on it. But I don't mess with that myself. If I use it all the way. All right, so that's it for the body of the airbrush. Now, since I have, well, let me get a little more windex here. The needle, you have to be very careful with this. Even with a paper towel, you don't want to bend the tip or do anything to this needle other than clean it. So I always take it in the paper towel with the windex and slide it back towards me, sharp end out, of course. And that way I won't bend the tip of the needle. If you bend it, you will have to either replace it or sharpen it. And I would just recommend watching out for it. Also, if you draw it through the paper towel, it will tell you if you have a bend in that tip. I can't see it without my glasses on, but I can feel it and it's smooth, so needle's still in good shape. If it had a little bend in it, it would rip the paper towel a little bit. So it's sliding right through, no problem. All right. So now I'm going to pull my little cap out of the windex. Ooh, it's slimy. And just give that a wipe down. Should be, the reason I put the parts in here first is so they have a chance to soak. And that windex will take this stuff off. It works really well. I like it. Some people don't. And that's the way it goes. All right. There's the cap. Okay, now for the fun part. Whoa. These things are awful, trying to get them out of here. I'm going to take the nozzle cap and give that a little swab out with my Q-tip. Ooh, I called it a Q-tip again. Dry that off. And then my little needle cap. Give that a dry off. I think that's pretty clean already. Yeah, it's hard to see this poor thing, but yeah, it's clean already. The windex just takes that stuff right off. Now, oh boy, here we go. The little nozzle itself is so tiny, it is really hard to get a hold of. You probably can't even see it on this paper towel, but a 0.2 millimeter nozzle is just tiny, tiny. So while I have that, I'm going to take this little cleaner and just make sure that no paint stuck on the inside of it. Go in from the back side if I can find it. Whoops, I lost it. And just swab that out a little bit. Don't push on it hard. You don't want to deform this nozzle. There's two important things in these airbrushes. It doesn't matter what kind of airbrush you have, the principles are all the same. You don't want to bend or do any damage to the little nozzle or the needle. Those are the two parts that you really got to watch out for. The rest of it, I don't think you could damage it, well, unless you had a big hammer. So let's see if I can get this started back in. Alright, so for the next part here, I am going to take the trigger. Now the trigger has little grip lines on the top. I always put those towards the front of the airbrush just so my finger has a better grip. And you turn this sideways and then drop it down in, and it should be pretty much centered with the input stock here on the airbrush. You'll feel it, it's got a little saddle in there. And then we'll take our chuck guide, and this has a kind of a wide part and a narrower part. The narrow part goes upwards in the airbrush. So you kind of have to angle that in there. There's the spring. And that little part on the end of the chuck guide goes right up against the trigger. Okay. Make sure your spring's on there, and then take this chuck guide and start screwing it into the body of the airbrush. Now, this chuck guide is also an adjustment. It will decide how stiff the trigger is to pull back. What I do is I just put it in far enough into the body of the airbrush in order to get the back handle screwed back in. And that's where I put it. So let's see how well I did. Nope, it's still back. So I'm going to put that in a little more. There we go, that snugs up. All right, now I know I said before, I always try to do the needle work, you know, from the front. But in this case you can't, because you can't get it through the chuck guide and get the chuck guide put into the airbrush. So in this case, I have no choice but to take the pointy end here and very carefully feed it into the back of the chuck. And I'll try to keep it straight and not damage that tip. And I will push it forward until it bumps into the nozzle. Do not push it, just bump. Like I say, you don't want to deform that nozzle, because now instead of a 0.2 millimeter nozzle, I could have a 0.3 or a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, and that's no good. And then I'll put the nut on here, and before I tighten it all the way, just check that needle, bump, and tighten. And there you have it. We're back together. All springy. And I will put the back handle on. There's a little cup back here. There we go. The needle kind of sticks into a little part within here. And the purpose for that is that this knob on the back of the airbrush will also adjust how far back your trigger will pull. If you don't want it to go all the way back, you can tighten this down, and now the trigger will only go to there. If I tighten it more, I have very little travel. But I just leave it out because I just, from experience, I know, you know, where I like to pull the trigger back to. So there we go. All right, and then we take our cup and put it back on, or you could, there's no particular order. What to do with my little nozzle cap here. Now, for the nozzle cap, I'm going to pull the trigger in and try not to bump that nozzle tip. And I will screw that back on. Keeping the trigger back, I will put the needle cap back on. And there you have it. Done. I will take a little Windex here, just the leftover on the rag, and just kind of clean up around here, and there you have it. We are as good as new, like it's never been used. The mighty Sparmax SP20X. And that is how I clean the airbrush. So that's the conclusion of airbrushing part 3. If you haven't seen 1 and 2, I have them in a playlist down on my page, or you can just find them in my uploads. But I thank you for watching this, and I hope that it helps somebody. I know that when I first started out with airbrushing, I didn't know any of this stuff. I watched a ton of videos and, you know, trying to learn this, and I think I've worked it down to a very easy process. As always, I appreciate you watching my videos, and give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and certainly leave me comments. The only thing I have to do now is figure out what I'm going to do next. And if anybody has anything they want to see me doing, leave it in the comments. I'm open to suggestions. You tell me what you want to see, and I'll tell you if I can do it or not. So, that being said, I'll see you at the next stop.